Dwayne, I was just with you, man. And I love you, brother.
What are we doing? As men, Dwayne Haskins dies, and it's an opportunity for social media content in the form of I'm being transparent. But I honest to goodness, I mean, there was a time when people died and people thought, you know what? Let me take, because again, that was like a 10-second video. And people said, well, let me take 10 seconds and pray for this person's soul. In diversity, we trust. And this is what I'm talking about when I say diversity, inclusion, and equity. And she works at Fox Sports. But again, ESPN calls itself the worldwide leader for a reason. As ESPN goes, everybody else in the sports world goes. So here's Joy Taylor with a hat on that says, in diversity we trust. Diversity has replaced God. Diversity, inclusion, and equity is a religion. And it's someone, Joy doesn't get this because, again, she's bought into the religion. But what she's saying is, my qualifications are my skin color, half of which is white, half of which is black. And my other qualification is my vagina and breast. Of all the different events you've covered, what has felt the most dangerous to you, or where you were a little like, man, should I be doing this?
I have been way in over my head. I've been running on a combination of the Holy Spirit, caffeine, and natural stupidity because I am not going to lie. I feel like all of America insane. I think we all didn't know what was going on the last few years. I think most of us still don't know. We're catching up. But I'll tell you this, I would rather be at the front lines not knowing what's going on so I can find out first than have to go through a daisy chain of people trying to find out what he said, what she said.
Off suspension now, temporarily locked out, and it was a situation where we had a T-shirt up that was through this T-shirt company that does, parody shirts and stuff. So they put up the logo, the famous Disney logo of the Magic Kingdom, and then they wrote boycott groomers on that. I wake up and I say, hey, this is a funny T-shirt, post it up, gets a lot of retweets, people are talking about it. Goes a couple of days and it sits up there. Nobody has any problem with it. Then Palm Sunday morning, I wake up, we're about to, get the kids ready for church. And I see, oh, you've been locked out of Twitter for 12 hours because of hateful content that may have been harassing towards, and the whole list, sexual orientation, gender identity. And I'm looking at it saying, I didn't know that groomers is a gender identity now. That's a new one to me.
If I ran New York City, Jason, with all humility, this wouldn't be happening. It wouldn't be happening. Could I clean it up? I believe I could. But I'd be deemed a racist and a this and a that. You can do it. But it takes discipline. It takes strength. You've got to work with the New York City Police Department, 40,000 officers, biggest department in the country. You've got to encourage them to enforce the law, even the little laws. All right, you urinate in the street, you get a ticket, that's $100. You don't pay the ticket, it's $250 and 2 days in jail. That's how you break the cycle. The progressives don't want that. Again, they feel all these criminals are victims and they shouldn't be punished. But you can bring it back with a very strong administration that's going to hold people accountable for their behavior.
Has New York's brand been so damaged that it will never fully recover?
Well, I think we've taken a hit the last couple of years, but I do think that we can recover. It's just going to take the right leadership. I mean, just think about New York, go back to the late 80s and early 90s. And there was a very famous Time magazine cover in 1991 that called New York City the rotting apple. Well, guess what? With great policy and great leadership in the 90s and 2000s, New York went from being one of the most dangerous cities in the country, in the world, to being the safest large city in the country. We were able to attract amazing investment here in New York. You had families that were built here, businesses, jobs created, great education. But now, unfortunately, with Bill de Blasio and unfortunately Eric Adams, who I had some hope for, in the first 100 days of his administration, we've just seen more of de Blasio 2.0 instead of actually taking the steps that I think some thought that he might.
This is why, again, you go down this road a little bit, they're eating their own. This is actually why we'll have this conversation at some point. I'm not actually worried about the wokes winning this culture war because they will inevitably eat each other. It'll be full cannibalization. The feminists cannot get along with the people who are obsessed with race, who cannot get along with the people who are obsessed with transgenders. They're not going to get along. It's all going to be a giant cannibalization at some point, and we'll be standing here with our values to fill the gap. The one thing I will say, I love Shamika's point, and I think it fits exactly with mine. Survivor's guilt, which, as you put it, the elites, and white guilt, the elites. I can assure you there is no white guy in America who is sane today, who's barely paying his bills, who's worried about how his white privilege has really provided for him today.
Do you know what happens if that officer lets him get that weapon from him? If that officer gets, if you as an officer let that guy, as bad as this fight has gone on for 4 minutes, if you let him get that weapon from him, you know what's going to happen? This right here is what's going to happen. 2 Wyandotte County deputy sheriffs fatally shot. I had 2 officers transporting an inmate. Somehow or another, the inmate got the gun from both of those officers, or got the gun from Patrick, and killed both of my officers. Shot her in the head, bam, while she was on the ground. But we want to talk, defund the police, you didn't hear nothing about that black man killing them 2 officers, did you? You didn't hear nothing about it. But now, if they would have killed him, you'd have heard all about it.
Understand the process of use of force policy and how police are trained, then what you see is not going to match up to what you think. When a person has gotten to a point where you have to use deadly force against them, you can shoot them wherever you believe is going to stop them and eliminate them as a threat. That's just where use of force begins, because there is what we would call an escalation of force and a use of force continuum. You start verbally, and then once you grab a person, they begin to fight you. Now you try to overcome them through, tactics, leg sweep, arrest tactics. And if that doesn't work, you have to escalate force, which the taser was in play. And once a person is in possession of your taser, which is a deadly weapon, they can render you incapable of fighting if you get stung with it, and they could potentially kill you. So that escalates your level of force that you can use as deadly force.
The guy can do pretty amazing things, but he chose to do the craziest thing, which is inject himself right back into the fight. He said, hey, I will put my money where my mouth is. I am going to try to help the free speech fight. I'm going to try to clean up the public square and see what happens. And then, of course, what was the reaction? Well, you've got all these blue check people saying this is the worst day ever for free speech, even though he's trying to free speech. You've got all the board members and all the blue, the blue-haired. So there's blue check people and blue-haired people. You've got the blue-haired people over at Twitter all freaking out that he's some mean dude or something. And I think there's a chance right now, because what he's doing bigger than just saving Twitter, and you've been talking about this for years. Twitter is sort of a myopic thing, and it's not really reality. But on the other hand, it is a big cultural influencer. He could have walked, he got back in, but the signal that he's sending to everybody is, hey, I'm fighting, are you fighting?